Welcome to Rose Red Homestead. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we appreciate you being a part of our community. And almost all of our videos focus on one or more themes of self-reliance, food security, and emergency preparedness. You know, if we ever have to actually live for an extended period of time on the food that we have stored, we're going to want some variety in the way that we do things. And so this video today is on self-reliance and on emergency preparedness, so that we can have in our food storage the things that we need to stir things up a little bit and make it a little bit more enjoyable for our families. So today we are going to do another in our series of how to make bread. This is specialty bread, and this is going to be an enriched dough for bread bowls. Now, I have a little story about bread bowls. Years and years ago, when I was married to my first husband, who was a dentist, he had a friend who was also a dentist, and our families were friends. His wife and I were friends, and our kids were about the same age, and we interacted quite a bit together. And she and I decided, our children were still very young, that we needed to change things up. She was a PhD in nutrition, and I was teaching elementary school at that time. And we decided that that wasn't quite enough for us, and so we were going to open a little lunch cafe, and we were going to feature bread bowls with all kinds of soups. And so we worked on recipes, and we made our plans, and we did a little business plan, and we hired a consultant, and then we took it to the Small Business Administration to see if we could get a little loan, and they went over the plans, and we were so excited. We had our recipes all down, and what we were told was that it would not be financially viable. We could not make money unless we also served alcohol. Well, bread bowls and alcohol, both families, neither of us used alcohol in the first place, and we just didn't think that that was a good match. And so we pretty much dropped those plans. But I've been enamored of bread bowls ever since that, for several decades. And so I thought that I would share with you one of our recipes that we sort of worked on and developed, and we will be using our same method that we have used before in terms of kneading and resting and so forth. So let's get right into it in just a moment. What exactly is an enriched bread dough? A thin bread dough or a standard bread dough has pretty much 4 ingredients, which is salt, water, yeast, and flour. And when we add, sometimes it has a little bit of fat too, but when we add additional fat or additional sugar or dairy or anything else like that, it enriches the dough. And what that means in terms of taste is that it tastes more buttery, and the crumb is very soft and lovely. And so we're going to be using a mildly enriched dough today. We have 5 cups of flour in our bread bowl, and I'm going to add the rest of the dry ingredients. We start with less flour so that we can control the texture. Here is 2 tablespoons of sugar. It's a little more sugar to help with the enrichment. It calls for a tablespoon of salt. Instead of using 2 tablespoons of yeast, we're going to use a little bit less. It will be the equivalent of 2 envelopes of yeast. So it's going to be 1.5 tablespoons, which is just about the same as 2 envelopes. And this is instant yeast, but you can also use the other type of dry yeast. That will work just fine as well. Okay, now we're going to add the liquids. I have 3 cups of water. This is just regular tap water, and it was about 98, 99 degrees. I always like to do it just under 100, even though most recipes call for it to be 110. The reason that I do that, I need to mix up the dry ingredients here. The reason that I do that is so that it will have a little bit of a slower rise. and therefore it will develop the flavor. The fermentation will help develop that flavor just a little bit more. So here is 3 cups of water. And for further enrichment, here is 1/4 cup of butter. Now this is actually ghee. We have a video on ghee. Ghee is butter without the protein in the milk solids. Very healthy. So that's going to help our enriched dough as well. Now, I always get in here with my hands. I know this grosses some people out, so use your stand mixer if you want to. I have a stand mixer, but I like to demonstrate how to do things by hand in case people might not have a stand mixer. Okay, this dough needs to be soft but not sticky, and right now it is very sticky. So before I turn it out on the counter, I am going to add additional flour. So we have 5 cups here. I'm going to add another cup. I'm trying to do this left-handed, so we'll see how I do. Okay, so here's about another cup. I think I'll hold back just a bit. So that was about 1/2 cup. And it will depend on your humidity and the type of flour that you use, whether or not you need to add additional flour. Okay, this is just about right. So I added an additional 1/2 cup of flour. I'm going to turn this out on the counter and start kneading it. And it may be that as we knead, we might add more flour as well. That is my son's coffee maker in the background. Yes, this is very soft, and I do need more flour, so I'm going to add a little bit more. It's sticking to the counter a little bit, and one of the tests of stickiness is if it does not stick to the counter, then, and our fingers, then we're good. So we're going to end up adding almost that entire extra additional cup of flour. Now, if you're using a stand mixer, you're going to want to knead for 6 or 7 minutes, adding flour until the dough is not sticky. Soft, but not sticky. And this is still sticky. That's why you always want to start with a low amount of flour, because it's much more difficult to soften up a stiff dough than it is to stiffen up a too soft dough. Now, we could spend all day kneading here, but as you know, one of the things that we've learned in our bread baking videos is that if we just set this out on the countertop and let it sit for 15 minutes after we've kneaded it and folded it a little bit, then it will develop gluten just by sitting there. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes. And look at our dough. It's all spread out. It's nice and soft. I'm going to knead it again, adding a little bit more flour, and then we're just going to let it rise. This is a nice soft dough. All right, this bowl is fairly clean of the dough, and I'm just going to give it a quick little spray. I could clean it out and do all of that, but I'm too pragmatic. So I'm going to go ahead and I kneaded this a couple of more minutes, and then rotate that and put it right here. I'm going to cover it with this plastic bag, and we'll let this rise until it's about double, which is about an hour. So we'll see you then. Wow, it is very hot outside. Jim and I were working outside, and we came in to just get a drink and rest. It's been 45 minutes, and look, it's a good thing we came inside. So it hasn't even been an hour, and this is more than double. So, and it's fine, it's not going to hurt anything, but I'm going to turn this out and show you how to shape these balls. And of course, it just, since I put that little bit of oil in this pan, the dough just comes right out. Okay, so I want to degas it, pressing all of the air out. Very soft dough. I don't want it to stick to me. Okay, so this is pretty good. And then, now is where you decide what you're wanting to do with this dough. At this point, you can freeze it after you degas it. Just fold it over, put it in a plastic container and put it in the freezer. You can freeze all of it or pot of it for later. When you get it out, let it thaw and then degas it again and then shape. Or you can form it into the buns and then freeze the buns before they rise, and then you can just pull the buns out, put them on a greased tray, and when they thaw and rise, then you can bake them. Or you can bake them and freeze them after they're cooked and just take them out of the freezer as you need. So this, of course, is going to make more than Jim and I can use, even though we have my son and his fiance with us because of the fire in her home. So you can judge the size that you want these bowls. If you have children and you know they're not going to eat great big adult sized bowls, then you can make them smaller. So we'll make some small ones, and just to demonstrate. So I'm cutting this dough in 8 pieces. And so this is a good full-size one. So what I'm going to do is form this just by tucking in, tucking in, tucking in. Round and around we go, making a ball with all the edges tucked in. And then I'm also putting a little bit of tension across the top as I go, and that's very important. So we want to have good tension across the top. And then I'm going to pinch all these foldings and then put this right on the tray. So that's about an adult size. And so if we're going to do a kid size, whatever size you think you might need, and this dough is very soft, so it's requiring quite a bit of flour, then you just twirl it around and around. This also helps to degas it, putting a little tension on the top, bringing all of those little rough edges together. And then put it on the tray. So I will keep doing this shaping, and we'll come back when everything is done, and I'm going to show you then what we're going to do to the tops. All right, so here we have it. I have 3 smaller ones and 6 larger ones, and so I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. Sometimes we like to do like a cross on the top of them, like hot cross buns. Now when I do that, you can have a fancy blade, or I just take a small serrated knife and I put a little bit of the baking spray on here so that it doesn't stick, and then I just do a simple cross like this. And I'm not going to do all of them so that we can compare and you can see whether you like it that way or not. We'll just do maybe about half of them. And we'll leave the rest alone. And then I do a simple egg wash. Now I do my egg washes just a little bit differently than a lot of people do. Sometimes you can just use the white and you add a little milk to it, or in this case I'm using the whole egg. I'm going to add a bit of water, and then I'm going to add, Jim and I don't drink much milk anymore, and I don't have any on hand, so I'm just taking like a half a teaspoon of milk solids, and then mixing all that up for a little bit of a wash. I want it just a little thinner. I like a very thin egg wash on these buns. Okay, so here we go. given how fast these rose the first time, they're going to rise very fast. So I'm not going back outside to work. I need to monitor these constantly. And I'm going to put them inside this garbage bag, tighten it up, and let them rise until they are just about double, and then we will get them in an oven, 375 oven, and we'll come back when I'm taking them out of the oven. It has been about 3 hours and I'm feeling quite wilted. I've been working outside, so pardon me if I look wilty. These have been out of the oven and have cooled for about 2.5 hours maybe just 2 hours, but they are completely cool, and that's what we want them to be. So here's the difference between the crisscrosses and the plain tops to give you an idea of which you might prefer. These are the 3 small ones. This one didn't turn out to be so small. Here are the 3 larger ones. And so just a couple of things. As you bake these, we need to be aware that these are going to have hot soup in them, and so we want them to be pretty sturdy all the way around. Now, these butted up against each other, and I don't like it when that happens, but I couldn't do anything about it. I could have cooked them on separate trays, and next time I will. But because these places where they butt up against each other are very soft, I pulled them apart, put them on 2 trays, and put them back in the oven for 10 or 15 more minutes until now these edges are nice and hard. Also, the bottoms need to be really browned so that the whole thing is very sturdy and can hold soup. So how do we make the bowls out of these buns? So here we go. I'm going to take a smaller one for myself, and so I'm just going to cut into the edge and then cut around. And I'm aiming, and this is just a little serrated blade. It's the same one actually that I put the crisscrosses on the top with. I'm pointing it down so it will come out kind of like an inverted volcano, or sort of. So this piece looks nice on the plate right beside the bowl, and then we want to pull out the innards. Now, we want to leave enough so that it is a sturdy location for the soup. I'm going to get a fork. We don't want to smash this dough, we just want to pull it out. And a fork actually is working just great. And I'm leaving about 1/2 inch border all the way around. So this would be about the size that you might use for a child, or in my case, I'm back on my food plan trying to lose the second 50 pounds I've been working on for a couple of years. So that's why I chose a smaller one. I don't want so much bread. And so I've scooped out, and then for heaven's sake, don't throw this inside away. So there's the inside. I'm going to make one for Jim too. I'm going to make his out of one of these smooth tops so that you can see the difference. Again, pointing the blade downward, hopefully cutting a cone out. All right, I did a better job of that one, so that's what it looks like. And then I'm going to pull the insides out of his as well. And this bread was, we like to cook it until it's about 200 internal temperature. But because I put these back in to get them really hardened on the outside, they even got hotter than that, which is probably a good thing because we want these bowls to be really good and sturdy. When I did this for my children, when we were practicing for our possible bread bowl restaurant, they loved to eat the insides just nice and soft without my turning them into crumbs. So I would give them these bread bowls full of soup, and then this on their plate would be this soft inside too, and they just loved that. Okay, so I'm going to cut this flat. And so this is how this is going to look plated. And I have over on the stove some of our butternut squash soup, and I canned that in this wet jar. It came out of this jar. And we've done a video on that. And it has potatoes, carrots, celery, onions, and butternut squash. And oh, it's so good. Maybe not so much on a hot summer day, but you know, we're gonna eat it. And so it just goes right in there. So this would work for stew, for chili, for soup, for whatever. Anything that you want to eat in a bowl. And then I'm just going to sprinkle some cheese on the top with a little sprig of sliced basil. There we have it, bread bowls. Is this fun or what? All families seem to just really love these. And you can dip, you can break this in pieces and dip it into the soup and eat it. So the whole thing is edible, which is really nice. So I hope this was fun for you and that you enjoyed it. I hope you try it. And we will see you with our next video. Jim and I are gonna go eat lunch. Bye-bye.